When you think about how a country is run, you probably picture a single official rule book, right? A constitution. Well, today we're diving into the legal system of New Zealand, a stable, modern democracy that's missing exactly that. It's a country that runs on a fascinating set of unwritten rules.
And that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth does a country function, and function well, without one supreme document laying out all the rules? At first glance, it sounds like it just shouldn't work. But, as we're about to see, New Zealand has made it work beautifully.
So here's our roadmap to figuring this out. We'll start by unpacking this whole idea of an unwritten constitution. Then we'll meet the key players in the system. We'll follow the path the law takes, climb the ladder of the court system, and finally see how New Zealand has created its own legal mix from influences all over the world. Let's get started.
First up, the unwritten constitution. This is really the bedrock of the whole system. And honestly, for most people, it's the most surprising part.
Yup, you heard that right. Unlike countries like the United States, there is no single master document that you can hold up and say, this is it, this is the Constitution. It simply doesn't exist in one place. So what does unwritten actually mean? It doesn't mean there are no rules. Oh, there are definitely rules. It's just that they aren't all collected in one book. Instead, they're found in a whole collection of places. Crucial acts of parliament, major court decisions that set precedents, and even long-standing traditions that everyone just agrees on. And this unique system is built on three key pillars. First, it's a constitutional monarchy, which means the queen is the head of state, but her role is basically ceremonial. Second, it's a unitary state, so all the real power is held by the central government. There are no separate state governments like you see in Australia or the US. And finally, it has a unicameral parliament. That's just a fancy way of saying there's only one house making all the laws.
Okay, so with that basic structure in mind, let's zoom in on the key players who make it all happen. The Crown, the Parliament, and of course, the people.
And here you can really see what a difference that single house parliament makes. On the left, in New Zealand, the path for a law is pretty direct. But on the right, in a system like the US or the UK, a law has to make it through a whole second chamber, like a Senate. It just goes to show you how efficient and streamlined New Zealand's lawmaking process can be. So here's how the power flows. It starts with the people, who elect their representatives to Parliament using a proportional voting system. That Parliament then forms a government and passes laws. And while the Governor-General represents the Crown, their role is pretty much just to give the final stamp of approval on what the elected officials have decided. A really crucial feature here is the reserved seats for Maori voters, which guarantees that New Zealand's Indigenous people have a voice right at the heart of government. So with this streamlined single-house parliament, how does an idea actually become an official law? It's a surprisingly straightforward three-step process. First, a proposed law, called a bill, is introduced. Then it goes through 3 readings, which are basically formal stages of debate, deep scrutiny, and making amendments. And if it passes the final vote, it goes to the Governor-General for royal assent. That's the formal signature that makes it an official act of Parliament.
Now, once those laws are in place, someone has to interpret them, right? So let's turn to the judicial branch and climb the ladder of New Zealand's court system.
The structure is pretty logical. Most cases start out in the local district courts. More serious cases go to the High Court, and appeals can then go to the Court of Appeal. But the really big change happened in 2003. That's when New Zealand created its own Supreme Court. Before then, the final appeal was actually heard all the way over in the UK. So establishing their own highest court was a huge declaration of legal independence.
But it's not just one simo-ladder. The system also has a whole set of specialized courts, each with deep expertise in really complex areas. You've got the Family Court, the Environment Court, and very importantly, the Maori Land Court, which operates under its own unique legal framework.
So, for our final piece of the puzzle, where do all these legal ideas actually come from? Well, New Zealand's system is a really fascinating blend of its old colonial roots and some very modern influences. You can see a clear evolution on this timeline. The journey starts in 1840 when New Zealand basically imported the entire English legal system. Then comes a massive leap in 1947 when it gained full independence to make its own laws. And in recent decades, you see this really pragmatic shift as New Zealand started looking beyond the UK and borrowing the best ideas it could find from other countries like Australia, Canada, and the US. And you can see that global shopping trip right here. The core principles of the court system, the common law traditions, that's still very much based on the UK model. But for modern commercial law,
New Zealand looked across the ditch to Australia and over to the US. And for its company law, it borrowed heavily from Canada. It's a classic pick-and-mix approach to building the best possible system.
Which brings us right back to our big question. New Zealand's success, with its flexible constitution, its efficient parliament, and its global influences, really challenges a core assumption. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, a country doesn't need a single, rigid rulebook to thrive. Perhaps the real strength isn't in a fixed document, but in the ability to adapt and evolve. What do you think?